Hi, it's nice to be here. Oh, it sounds weird. I might just do this. Yeah, I think that's better for me. Okay, so how's the volume? Am I talking loud enough? We're good? Okay, so my name is Barnaby Steel. I'm from Marshmallow Laser Feast, and I'm going to take you on a little journey. First, I just want to check that this sound's working. Great. So you've caught me in a transition in my life. I'm going through a phase, some big stuff happened. Elio Pasquale Steel. So this is my boy. He's a new introduction to my life. I didn't really have to do much. We had a few cocktails. This whole thing happened, and it made me think that our slither of perception that we call reality is so tiny and minuscule. We've got no idea about these complex things that are just on autopilot. So how does a baby come about? It's such a miracle. So I'm going to take you on this journey through basically a realization that nature is so complex and so beyond our understanding, and I'm feeling personally quite detached from it. So I don't know about you guys, but I feel a little bit like this chap. So I feel detached from nature. I'm born in a city. I set a company up, Marshmallow Laser Feast. The whole ethos of the company was around engaging with new technologies, the possibility of new technologies to immerse the senses and create experiences that weren't possible before. And so while I'm on that journey, I'll just take you through some of the old work that we've been doing. I'll kind of talk over it so that you can understand. So that bit was from photogrammetry. We're creating laser forests, light installations, will.i.am, selling cars. A lot of the work that we do is based on experiments in the studio, so we're kind of playing with the possibility of all this new tech. And every time that new tech, drones, we're playing with drones and tracking systems. This was a kind of musical organ for an advertising festival, a light painting machine for McLaren. Again, there's this kind of currency with innovation and advertising that we kind of tapped into. Did a big thing with U2, Bono there, working his hips, selling VWs, exploring projection mapping as a kind of window into this virtual world, but within the real world. This one was photogrammetry. So it's quite a broad range of work there. So yeah, we're feeling this is how we sort of spend our lunch breaks. This would be our little lunch breaks. Bit of volleyball in the tracking system. So we're going to go from this. And this is where we end up by the end of the talk. This is the new lunch break. Oh, the texture of moss. Oh, the richness of the senses. So we'll start with some Q&A. So hands up if you can name all these logos. Okay, so keep your hands up if you can name all these leaves, except for the bottom one. Okay, yeah. Oh, impressive. That's impressive. Okay. So I was feeling detached from nature, and so this whole journey is about a reconnection to nature. I realized that I've never actually met a panda. This is the closest I've come to a panda. I started looking into some statistics, and I've got them written down here. There's a lot of people living in cities. In 1900, there were about 1.6 billion people on our rock. 100 years later, in 2000, there's 6 billion, which is a serious exponential curve, worrying exponential curve. And by 2050, there's going to be 66% of the world's population living in the cities. And so according to a study by the Environmental Protection Agency, the average American spends 93% of their time indoors. So while we're kind of schnuffling around in the paddling pool, this is happening, the Anthropocene. So it's not official yet, I don't think, but the Anthropocene is this new geological age where human beings are changing the face of the planet. And I've got some other kind of shocking statistics here. The the WWF found that the number of wild animals has halved in the past 40 years. So while we're sort of tinkering away in the paddling pool, selling cars, oh, that's cool, will.i.am, laser installations, all this stuff's happening. So I'm starting to become more aware. And it's never more acute when you're in the supermarket reaching for some moisturizer and inadvertently you're deforesting Indonesia. So there's these things happening where it's like, okay, I need to sort of engage with this. And so I started thinking about the human sensory sack, the kind of limits of our perception and how our senses have evolved over time. So one thing is that if you think of your senses as evolving over millions of years, that whole journey is a dialogue with nature. The senses don't evolve in isolation, they're evolving in response to stimulus. And there's a good quote here, Darwin cranking it, so there could have been no flower without an eye to see it. So if you think about this long journey of evolution, suddenly we're isolated in cities, we're engaging on human-to-human relationships and engaging with man-made technology. So I'm starting to sort of, within my own journey, I'm kind of recognizing this detachment from nature, even though as a kind of subtext, everything is nature. A mobile phone sort of flowers through human hands in a similar way to a flower in nature. You know, we are nature, everything on the rock is nature, but there's this detachment from the natural world that I'm kind of interested in. So I start to think about, okay, what is this tipping point and how can we make change? So there's one real truth that we protect the things we love. And so I've got a few of my kind of idols here that I'm just going to talk through that have influenced this journey. So Satis Kumar, on the same tip of protecting the things we love, he's saying that in order to go from consumerism to conservation, you need to immerse yourself in nature. You need to spend time sniffing the woods, rolling around on the bark of the trees, and basically being immersed in nature. And it's that immersion of the senses where you fall in love and you feel the awe and you reconnect. So I really believe that that's true. But with everyone moving to cities, how's that going to happen? We'll come back to that. Then Richard Feynman, love Richard Feynman, he's a real idol. So he talks about a scientific understanding of the world only ever adds to wonder, it never subtracts. And so he's got this lovely little interview. Let's, can you hear that? Okay, I know, anyway, I'm going to talk over the top. So Richard, he's talking to an artist, and he's like, they're talking about the beauty of a flower. So his artistic friend, when an artist is looking at a flower, Richard's like, okay, so you've got this way of looking at a flower and your aesthetics are finely tuned. You've spent more time, your eyeballs, analysing this flower, so you might be more appreciative of the aesthetics and the symmetry. But when a scientist looks at a flower, he sees a whole other beauty. He sees that the reason this flower is red is because it's co-evolved in relationship to the eyeball of a pollinator. So that raises the question, does the pollinator have an aesthetic sense like humans? And then there's other kind of inner beauties. So think about photosynthesis, and that being the mechanism by which all of the proteins and energy that fuel all life on planet Earth come from that plants eating sunlight. So you've got these stories that when you start to attach them to your observations of a plant, they only ever add to wonder, they never subtract. And so this raises some kind of questions in my life, and one of them is, am I a car salesman? And the answer is sometimes yes, but can we use that money to do bonkers personal projects? Yes. So while all this is going on, a bit of a midlife crisis, virtual reality happens. This is virtual reality. That's my business partner, Robin. Hates me showing this, but I stick it in all my talks. So, virtual reality. What is virtual reality? Well, the human sensory sac, the human sensory system, we're working out how to hack it. We stick the goggles on your eyeballs. We understand where you're looking so we can simulate what the brain expects to see, but it's not real, it's virtual. So hacking the senses is the first time that we can mold perception. I kind of think of myself like Patrick Swayze, making these virtual reality projects. And what you're really doing is you're able to create experiences that can mold perception. You can play with the senses, and if you think the potential is basically to create experiences that weren't possible before. So because our human sensory stack is limited, it only is ever what it's going to be, but you can hack the senses and create experiences that stimulate extrasensory perception. And so this is where it gets kind of really interesting. How can we use this technology to expand perception? And with the Richard Feynman talk in the background, think about how we can create experiences of that knowledge. So just a little bit on perception here. There's this relationship of perception and technology that's been going on since the dawn of time. There's lots of examples of it. I particularly like this one. So everyone's painting horses like that until Muybridge comes along and takes a sequence of photos. And so because of this sequence, suddenly our understanding of the way a horse moves is transformed. And that sticks in the imaginations of people. So when you're looking at a horse, you don't think of it as doing the double-legged strut. You think of it as running like this. And so there is this relationship between technology and expanding the limits of our perception, how it expands those limits. I love this quote. The duration of the beat of a hummingbird's wing is as concealed to our sensory organs as is the drifting of the continents. And, you know, the older I get, the more you sort of realize that our slither of reality is just a fraction, but then technology is our window. So if you've got an iPhone and you're filming a hummingbird, suddenly you can see the shape of its wing beat because you've got 320 frames a second on your phone. So experiencing reality beyond the senses. So just going to quickly recap. There's this idea that Satis Kumar's got of having a deep experience in nature to shift you from a kind of consumption mindset towards conservation through falling in love, that deep experience. Then there's a scientific understanding adding to wonder, expanding perception, acknowledging that our slither of reality is just a slither and that there's much more out there. So combining these things, and I think there's another element here that runs through the work is stimulating a sense of awe and curiosity. And so I'd say that goes to the core. And so we created this project, which I'm going to go into now, called In the Eyes of the Animal. I found this lovely Michael Pollan quote, looking at the world from another species' point of view is the cure for the disease of human self-importance. I love that one. That goes to the core of this work. Basically, it is about expanding perception and making the human feel small and connecting to the wonder of nature. So we made this experience in the eyes of the animal. It's a 45-minute talk, so I'm going to whiz through a bit quicker than normal. So when we make these projects, this was an art installation in Grisdale Forest, which is up north in England. We had this idea that if we could 3D scan a section of the forest, do the installation there. It's a sculpture park, so we had the headsets hanging from trees. Then people would be able to put on the headset, go on a journey through the perceptual systems. It's almost like your reality gets flavored by a mosquito. It's like, ooh, this mosquito, it's sniffing carbon dioxide. Maybe the mosquito can see the trees breathing. It has this awareness of CO2 density. It can see you at 200 meters away. When it gets closer, it starts to use heat and other stuff and smell finally. And then we kind of took people on this journey. There was a mosquito, there was a dragonfly, a frog and an owl. And the really interesting part to it is when people get to the end of the experience and they take the headset off, they'd kind of gather around a tree and there's like a damp pond bit where we stuck the frog, and they start to go like, Janice, I think I was in here, I was by the lily pads and the thing, and they talk about, and they hung around for ages, they're looking at the branches. Oh, it's my dad, it's my dad.
Unbelievable, very clever, amazing.
Isn't it bonkers that you can stick your dad in your work? He's not looking at it, he's in it. Oh, he's such a...
Good. And the sound.
He's a very cheerful character, my dad. Very
This
supportive.
man here.
So it's not, I can't have my dad and not show you my mum. This is my mum. So let's see what my mum had to say.
It felt like you were there at the beginning of creation when all the molecules were coming together. It was incredible. Amazing experience. It gave you a totally different view of things. And I really felt with that pack on my back that I was like, you felt the dragonfly. You could really see things.
Oh, my dad is so cheerful. Urson's there, he's got some state-of-the-art technology, binaural fern recording device on the side there.
Totally different things.
It raises this question, what happens when you take the helmet off? That's the real thing. Can you the ultimate VR experience, you go on a journey from the atoms in your hand through the bacteria in your gut, experiencing all these nested ecosystems, and you come out to the grand vision of the Earth being just one interconnected being. So imagine going on that, and then you come out of the VR, and you never need to put VR on again because you're so blown away of the richness of reality. And so that's the focus of the work, stimulating wonder, curiosity. I went off piste. I've gone off I'll come back to that if I've got time. So I don't think I've got time for my little nuggety stories. There was a woman with some dogs, basically. And she was just walking her dogs, and she came across the installation. She's like, oh, what's this in the headset? And we're like, oh, it's another dimension. You can see through the eyes of different animals. Oh, I like the sound of that. So we stuck her in. And because there's sound-cancelling headphones, she's got no idea that everyone can hear her. She's like, where are my hands? Where are my hands? Oh, what's going on? It's like, and she starts talking about, I haven't had an experience like this since skydiving. It's like skydiving, and her dogs are howling. So it's a spectator sport. So this virtual reality experience, you're designing in 360, so it's like a master medium. You can unwrap it. We toured it on the Ron Arad curtain call. It's perfect for full domes. So once you've made these experiences, they unfold into all these different formats. Ideally, like the dream is always to have it on location, on site. You're taking the richness of all of the senses. You've got the smell of the bark, the real location. But when it has to tour, we kind of replicate that as much as we can. So these are some photos of the touring installation. If you're really interested in the tech, I can talk more about that after this if you want to come up to me. But we're using backpack PCs, expanded tracking systems and stuff now. I'm going to do a little test. I was going to try a little guided meditation. So I'd like you all to close your eyes. We'll see how this works with headphones. Okay, so we're going to start with the slow breathing rhythm. So breathe in, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4, and in, 2. As you're breathing in and out, imagine seeing the particles flooding into your nostrils, these blue oxygenated particles. They flood in through your mouth and on your nostrils. And when you breathe out, imagine slightly warmer particles, carbon dioxide, leaving your body and slowly becoming cooler. And now when you breathe in, imagine those particles going down your trachea into your lungs. And keeping your eyes closed, if you tilt your chin down, imagine being able to see those oxygen particles flowing into your chest. And what you'll see is what looks like upside-down trees, which is your lungs. And as you keep breathing, that oxygen is flowing up into your brain, round into your circulatory system. And now if you just hold one hand up in front of your face, and imagine seeing that oxygen flowing through your vascular system, and it's moving with the beat of your heart. Because I'm short on time, we're going to come back to reality. And so that's a kind of one of the visualizations that we're playing with for these experiences. So, you are plant-like, you're connected to the plant. You're probably a byproduct of the plants making so much oxygen. And so these branching networks have been around for a long time, and actually they go back to the sort of Big Bang, this kind of complexity of branching networks. But so thinking about revealing those things. I can explain it to you as a visualization, but what does it mean in virtual reality to see that stuff and to remind you of where you come from? Again, with you know, the heart, the lungs. I've just been gathering references, and these are kind of like the starting point of projects. So this leads me to the mother of all trees, the biggest lung on the planet. This is a sequoia tree. Ah, check out that Mother Hubbard. What a beauty. So they are actually the biggest organisms ever to be sustained by the planet. There's nothing bigger in the fossil record. The only bigger organisms are like these clonal forests that kind of cheated, because it's like thousands and thousands of trees that are just one tree. But think of an individual, these are the biggest. And so we wanted to basically show that your breath cycle is connected to this other living, breathing being. But in order to do that, you need to accelerate time. That's the biggest boundary between the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom, is time. So for this experience, Tree Hugger, I'll show you some stuff from it here. The experience starts by time accelerating. And what we did was, if you think about a tree breathing in and out, that's basically the day-night cycle. When the sun comes up, it's photosynthesizing, there's all the transpiration, it's pumping out oxygen, and at night it rests. So we accelerated time to sync it up with the human breath cycle. So as you go on this journey, well, actually, I can talk about, we ran out of money. Basically, you go on a journey and you arrive at the crown of the tree. But what we're doing now with this project is using breath sensors and heart rate monitors, so that when you get to the crown of the tree, there's these rivers of oxygen. And I know when you're breathing in, I know where you are. So as you breathe in, that river flows into your lungs and defines what I just explained earlier, your vascular system and your lungs. And there'll be 10 people in that experience all at the same time in this kind of, well, I guess it's just visualizing air. And I love thinking about air, because we're as immersed in air as fish are in water. And it's this invisible thing that we don't think about, but it's like, it's in us, it's rolling through us, it gives life to everything. So it's kind of like this connective tissue that joins plant with animal. So when we're doing these projects, we're thinking, okay, so we want to go to the wonders of nature and scan them. So if we're going to go to the Ball Lake, we want to use the best scanners on the planet. So this is it's a surfacer scanner. It's like a Russian LiDAR scanner. They use it for looking for faults in engineering equipment. And so when we scan these trees, we're basically combining the most high-resolution laser scanners in existence with high dynamic range photography. So when you put those things together, you can color it. What you're looking at here is just billions of points, and you can color those points with the photographic data. So we're working on these like new pieces of software. This is a partner in LA called AtomView, who we're working with on this pipeline. But we're always looking to engage with all these different innovative. That's the laser scan without the color data, just to kind of give you an idea. So we're looking to engage with all of the new technologies. Think of it like a perception lab. We're engaging with all of the technologies that we need to sort of simulate reality, but beyond your senses. So we're kind of, that's where we're at. And there's I guess a kind of grimmer side to this is we're destroying habitats and environments. In a way, you're creating these digital fossils. I mean, it's such an amazing way, because VR gives you a sense of presence and place. You can appreciate the scale of a tree. You can never appreciate the scale of these trees through a photo, but through virtual reality you can. And I'll get on. How are we doing for time? No, we're okay, we're okay. I'm going to whiz through this stuff. So a little bit more about the techniques we're using. Up the top here, this is CT scans. So same stuff they use on brains. You can scan soil, you can reveal root systems. And then these are some of the simulations that we're using. So based on the flow of water through the sapwood of the tree. Here we've got some of the systems we designed for glucose flowing back down into the Wood Wide Web. There's more on that. I'm conscious of time because I'm running pretty short, but I can talk to you about the Wood Wide Web after at the bar if you want to dive in there. So as we're making these experiences, we've got to think about the richness of the senses. So, in fact, there's a good little story that I'll sneak in. There was this a chap that I met in a desert in Israel. He was playing this beautiful Bedouin music, and I had my virtual reality set up. And he came over to me, and I was like, he said, "Oh, what have you got in the headset?" And I was trying to explain it. I was like, "Oh, we're exploring animal perception, and when a dragonfly sees the world, it's at 300 frames a second, and you see the world at sort of like film speed. So let's say like 25 frames a second." And he goes, "Shh," and he goes like this with his finger, and he puts it on my lips to shut me up, which is an amazing way to shut someone up. Shh. He said, "Tell me, what does an apple taste like?" Nailed it. Try and describe what an apple tastes like. It's impossible to describe the richness of flavor through words. And so, like, as we're doing all of this, we're not trying to, like, fake the senses. You need to touch something. The richness of touch is important, the richness of smell. So we're not looking at, well, we're looking at the technology that can mimic that stuff, but it's important to really engage with the richness of the senses and tell stories that couldn't be articulated through words. We did a photo shoot of the tree installation in the forest to make it look like we'd done an installation in the forest, but we never did it, but it looks good. Here we've got a smell device. We're working with a company called Sensible Technologies. So this kind of clipped on underneath the headset, and it was essentially, you know where someone is in 3D space. So as I approach the tree and I push my head through the bark, the intensity of the sap, we can release more sap. In fact, the way that little device works is you've got 24 tiny pistons, and they push air through a porous membrane. And so you can vary the amount of air going through, and it only lasts for a fraction of a second. So you keep pumping air. So if I'm in the sap, it's like sap, 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 sap. Okay, fresh air, fresh air. I go down here, it's like, oh, damp, damp, boggy smell. So it's actually a really great way of creating interactive smell, because the problem was always, once you release a smell, it lasts too long. So this is really quick latency. So we're playing with that. So this leads me into this final chapter. So we're kind of exploring these, this little Venn diagram of these trends, sort of inadvertently. We're just playing, but it sort of, we found ourselves positioned in the middle of this diagram. So thinking about immersive experiences, we've got Punch Drunk, love those guys, immersing the senses, creating bonkers experiences. Think about the future of this technology. You're able to mold perception. The cost of it is going down, down, down. You can immerse more and more people. So if you're talking about immersive storytelling, virtual reality and these future technologies are going to get more and more immersive and cheaper. So that's the forefront that we're playing in, and that's the space we're looking to occupy. Then there's this desire to connect with nature. We're locked in cities, creating experiences of the wonder of nature that you can have in your living room or in art galleries or at science museums. And then the last part is thirst for knowledge. And this was something that kind of came to us. Somebody tried our experience and started to talk about how immersive, basically multi-sensory immersive education is the future of schools. So we started to engage with these people. There's this beautiful ancient quote: "I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, I do and I understand." We're close. And never was that truer than in virtual reality. So you can embody processes, you can play, you can do lots of stuff. It's really cool. So does anyone remember the TV getting wheeled into the classroom? Am I showing my age? It's like, yes! We used to watch Blackadder in history lessons. It was the best. So we're going to take over the school gyms. We're going to rock up. We'll plant a section of the Amazon in the school gym. And we'll be like, come on, kids. We're going to go and what are we going to do? We're going to do, what, biology? We're going to do physics? Are we going to learn about quantum biology? We're going to learn about photons of light being eaten in the photosynthesis process? Are you going to like go down the flow of carbohydrates into the Wood Wide Web and experience this neural network under the soil? There's so many beautiful stories to be told that we're super excited about making. And I'm conscious that, and we've started playing with it, basically. This is the tip of the iceberg. We're still doing car commercials to fund it, but we're on the edge of sort of expanding this out. So I'm going to end on this. The technology isn't going to stop. It's going to keep evolving. It's going to be able to immerse the senses, and it's going to get cheaper and cheaper. So when we're talking about molding perception, I think the essence of or the question you've got to ask is, are you taking people out of reality, or are you going to re-engage them with reality? And so for us, we want to, when you take the helmet off, you're blown away by the wonder of reality, because we only really perceive a tiny slice, and this is an opportunity to expand that slice. And end with my one of my favorite psychedelic explorers, Terence McKenna. Nature is not our enemy to be raped and conquered. Nature is ourselves to be cherished and explored. Thank you.
Because it's the last session on this stage, we still have some time for Q&A. Who's interested? So if there are questions, just raise your hand. Was that a hand? No? No. Well. Okay. Ah, yeah, there's a question. Wait.
Okay. Yeah, so, is it working? Inside. Okay. So, I have a question. So, I love VR. I was only briefly introduced to it about a year ago, and I tried this tilt paint, where I could, paint inside the application. I guess the audience knows this. I find everything you talked about really fascinating, and there are so many applications we can use VR for, especially education, but also just all these embodied experiences. But one of the things that I maybe miss a little bit when I had my own VR experiences is that being in VR can also make you feel a little bit lonely, if you know what I mean. Simply because, we get detached from our own bodies, and at the same time, it's also really fascinating. So it holds a bit of a paradox. How do you see the potential in getting people to connect through art and VR? I mean, to get that loneliness feeling, maybe, to embrace that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's just like a little technical glitch while all this stuff's getting worked out. Basically, if you think about sort of Facebook connecting people in quite a primitive way through messages, sharing images, VR is ultimately funded by Facebook and people like that, so they see the potential of it to connect people in virtual worlds. So I think you'll find that all of that stuff is going to kind of evaporate, but then the question is, do you want to be spending lots of time in virtual reality or lots of time in reality? And I think that's the danger of it. There's going to be lots of people trying to hook you into being immersed. It's kind of like Second Life on steroids, where people... So I don't know where all of that stuff's going to go, but as a kind of artist, I think there's always the flip side, and so I'm trying to push forward this idea that if people are in cities... Yeah, I mean, I said it all anyway, but I kind of feel like... the experiences we're making now are actually all connected. So you have 10 people, backpack PCs, big tracking environment. You can see other people through their breath. And so because of the technology is getting cheaper and the new Vive tracking system, all of this stuff is evolving so quickly. Roller discos, that's what I'm waiting for. Yeah, just like roller skating through the mycelial network. That's where it's going to get fun. Yeah.
So we've got another question over here.
Hi, thanks so much. My mind is completely blown. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you.
And how far are you working together with scientists, and how do you think can this lead to new discoveries maybe and things that we weren't able to explore with like our limited sensory system so far?
Yeah, so because a lot of our stuff so far has been a little bit shoestring budget, you can start out with this intention, we've got this PhD boffin, but he's really busy and he's actually not getting anything out of it other than like a cool thing to talk about. So we're trying to work out ways of getting better collaborations, because for us, if you think of like scientists, they're like this scalpel, like these PhD boffins, they're going so deep into their subject, like the perception of frogs. We were speaking to a guy on that. He only studies one frog, the way one frog sees, and all the frogs are different depending on what, their ecosystem. So you find these people and it's so far detached from what you're learning in school. So in the same way, kind of TED Talks sample the best I can imagine that the flavor that we'd love to have is that there's always we're mining the brain of these people, and we're never going to be able to. Well, I guess that information is so fascinating. The forefront of scientific understanding is really where it's at, and so I think mining that forefront and translating it to experiences is what we want to be doing. That's the interesting territory, because it's on the, I guess it's the forefront of what perception is, whether you're told those stories or whether you experience them through virtual reality. Yeah, I think it's that's the fun part.
Yes, so any other questions? If not, I would like to thank you again.
Thank you.